Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth and my channel is Book as in Books. Welcome if you're new or welcome back if you are a regular. In this video, I want to talk about the price of books, and more precisely, I want to answer the question, are hardcover new releases luxury items? And this is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a little while. In fact, I prepared a version of this video last year, but for some reason I never filmed it. I had gathered some data and I just never filmed the video. So I had to start over again. And the reason I'm doing this now is that I was prompted by the video of Anne Novella. Just a few days ago, she asked us she asked the publishers, do you want us to read? Are you trying to make us stop buying books? Do you want us to buy your books? Why are they so expensive? And some of the booktubers have answered, and it's a topic that is always relevant in the book world, the price of books. So I'm going to leave links in the description box to Anne's video and also to other videos that I saw on the topic, some that were related to Anne's video and some others that were not. It's simply a topic that is always relevant. So, why am I focusing on hardcover new releases? I decided to focus on that because, in my opinion, this is the most common point we have in the book community. If we were all reading old books, we would all be reading different books. So the new ones are the ones that are of interest. The new books are the ones that are talked about in magazines, in newspapers, that are being reviewed. The new books are the ones that are exciting. So for bookworms, for people who love books, if you don't like the expression bookworm, so for people who love to read and who love books, new releases are super interesting. And also for people who don't read much, chances are they will be attracted to new releases more than to other books. So imagine you're a person who doesn't read much and you walk into a bookstore. The first thing you will see is the quantity of books. Chances are you will be overwhelmed. You will not know where to look. So if you go to the tables where there are presentations of, you may be interested in that, hottest new releases and things like that, chances are you will see new releases and hardcover new releases, and that will be your entry point. You will try to find something in there that interests you, or perhaps you will have read an article in a mainstream magazine, mainstream newspaper, and it will take you to the bookstore to try to find the book they were talking about. And in all likelihood, it's going to be a hardcover new release. So that's the reason why I wanted to talk specifically about these. And also, I think that the new releases are a very important part of the publishing world, because if they were publishing only old books, publishing houses would cease to exist. It would be reprinting houses. So for us readers to get new books, well, there needs to be new releases. And the new releases tend to come in hardcover, at least in the English-speaking world. In French, there is no such thing as hardcover books. So if you're new to my channel, my first language is French. I am originally from the region of Montreal. And the books that are being sold in Francophone bookstores are books that are mainly, in the large part, published in France. And there's no such thing as a hardcover. The books come out in paperback, sort of large format paperback, and then the reprint is in mass market paperback. So the hardcover, from my point of view, is something specific to the English-speaking world. In this video, what I wanted to do was I wanted to take some books that would be our examples, that would be sort of our flagpoles, and analyze the price of these books and see if they are luxury items or not. So I went to the bookstore and I looked for new releases from 2023. I did the exercise last year for books for 2022, but these data is already out of date because the inflation is such that the numbers have changed. So I went to the bookstore looking for 2023 new releases in hardcover, and I was looking for the most expensive and the least expensive, and I figured I'll find one in the middle, and that will be our range. So I found the most expensive, which was $45 US, and then I found the least expensive, which was $30 US. So I figured, well, there's no book at $37.50, so I'm going to use 4 books that will be $30, $35, $40, and $45, and that's going to be our source of our boundary poles. But then I started working with these numbers, And then I went back to the bookstore and sort of realized I had not really taken into account all new releases. I had focused on the nonfiction section. And of course, when I moved to the fiction section, I found quite a few books under $30. So the least expensive book is now $27. That's the cheapest I could find. Well, there was one at $26.99, but it's basically the same price. So I decided to keep the other 3 books because I think they're still representative of something, of the price of new releases. So our subject for this study will be Happy Place by Emily Henry. So I'm going to give you the currency in US dollars, Canadian dollars, and UK pound. So 27 US dollars, 37 Canadian dollars, because I live in Canada. That's the reason I decided to use that. And in the UK, it is 14.99 pounds. So that is the suggested retail price. I should start by mentioning that. I am talking about the suggested retail price and not the price at which you can get it. Because all of these books, chances are they are cheaper if you order them on Amazon or if you have a membership loyalty card with a big bookstore chain such as Barnes & Noble or Indigo in Canada. So there's a way to get these books cheaper. However, the suggested retail price is the one established by the publishing house. And it's the one that, according to the publishing house, they are telling us if the books are sold at this price, everybody will be happy. The authors will get a good pay, the publishing house will make some money, the bookstores will make some money. And with that, the reader will be happy because they'll get new books. Because if the bookstores and the publishing house keep publishing books, then you'll get some new books. So that is the price, according to the publishing house, that will make everybody happy. And the question is the reader happy with that? And that is the question we are examining right now. So, and to find the suggested retail price of books that were not available in Canada, so it's basically to get the UK price, what I did was I went on the site of a bookstore in the UK, and I looked at the price of book. So basically, I went on Waterstones, and if they sell a book lower than the suggested retail price, what they do is that they give the retail price and they slash it and then they give you the sale price. So I used the suggested retail price. So that's how I found my numbers. Does it mean I haven't made any mistakes? I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. So as I said, the first book, our cheapest book, is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And then we move to nonfiction. So our next step, at $35 US, $47 Canadian, and 25 pounds UK. That is King, A Life. That is a biography of Martin Luther King Jr. by Jonathan Aig. Next post is The Earth Transformed, An Untold History by Peter Frankopan. It is 40 US dollars, 54 Canadian dollars, and 30 pounds. So this is nonfiction about how climate has affected history. So how floods or droughts or desertification or various climactic events have affected the history of the world. And our most expensive book is another work of nonfiction. So this is The World by the subtitle is A Family History of Humanity by Simon Sebag Montefiore. This is 45 US dollars, 60 Canadian dollars, and 35 British pounds. So these are our 4 books, and I'm going to put I think I'm just going to put it above my face. So that's going to be where the table is going to be. It's just going to be right in the middle of the screen. So to give you an idea of whether these prices in all these different countries are equivalent, I converted the Canadian prices and the UK prices into US dollars, and I used the exchange rate from the weekend of June 3 and 4, and I'm filming this the weekend after, so it might be slightly out of date, but it should give you an idea. So Happy Place at 27 US dollars. The Canadian price converted is 27.54. So that is with the Canadian dollar worth 74 cents US. And the British price converted into US dollars is 18.67. That is at the UK pound being the UK pound. I just wrote UK on my table, as you will see anyway, was worth $1.25 US. So the price of Happy Place in Britain is an outlier. It does not match the price in the United States and Canada. I don't know why. I don't know why the retail price is so low. And as you will see for the other books, it's not the case. Everything is pretty much in line. So for the biography of Martin Luther King, it's $35 US. The Canadian price in US dollars is 34.98, so pretty close. And in pounds, it's 31, not in pounds, the UK price in US dollars is 31.13. So it's rather close. The UK is getting a bit of a bargain, but it's rather close. The Earth Transformed at $40 US. The Canadian price converted is 40.19, so again, pretty spot on. And the UK price converted is 37.35 US. So again, just a little bit under. And then finally, the World at $45 US. The Canadian price converted is 44.66 US. And the UK price converted is 43.57 pounds. So in general, the UK is getting a bit of a bargain for 3 out of the 4 books. I think it's just a question of the value of the British pound currently versus the US dollar. But that can change from day to day. So it doesn't mean that UK buyers get an absolute bargain, because that's the thing. Even if we convert the price in US dollars, in Canada and in the UK, we are not getting paid in US dollars. So it doesn't mean anything that a book is less expensive or more expensive in US dollars, because that's not the currency that we use. So to get an idea of how much it actually costs compared to what we are paid, I have calculated the price of each of these books compared with the minimum wage, because all of these states, in the case of the United States and Canada, we have multiple minimum wages, but there is a minimum wage everywhere in the country. So every country has a minimum wage, and I thought, okay, how many hours do you have to work to buy these books if you are paid at minimum wage? Now, of course, you probably have to pay taxes, and the minimum wage is a gross revenue. It's not a net revenue. So chances are for a net revenue, you would have to work a lot more hours, but we'll just use the numbers that we have. So in the United States, the minimum wage varies from $16.50 an hour to $7.25 an hour. That's the minimum. The minimum is there pretty much in many states. It's the federal minimum. So basically the federal law says if you have no state minimum, it's this. Yeah, the states that have no minimum, are they pining for the good old days of slavery? Anyway, so there is a minimum that is the federal minimum of 7.25, which is used in many places. And the salaries of 16.50 is used only in the District of Columbia. In California, it is $15.50, and in New York, it is $14.20. So you can see that the highest wage is not the most common. In Canada, the minimum wage varies from the highest at 16.77 cents. That is in Nunavut, no, in the Yukon, sorry, that is in the Yukon. In British Columbia, it is at $16.75. And it doesn't vary much. The lowest is at $13. And that is in Saskatchewan. However, it is planned to be augmented to $14 next year, and then $15 the year after. So basically, there's not many provinces where the minimum wage is not $15 an hour. In the UK, the minimum wage depends on the age and not on the place. So if you are under 18, it's £5, no, not $5, £5 and 28 pence per hour. And then there are different, it goes up by increments. And if you are older than 23, then the minimum wage is £10 and 42 cents an hour. Cents or pence? 10.42 pounds an hour. So that's the range. So, and now I will just say a whole bunch of numbers, but I'll just put the table right over me so you won't just stare at me looking. You won't just stare at me staring at my computer. So for Happy Place, which is our cheapest book, in the US, depending on where you work, if you are paid a higher salary, you will have to work 1.63 hours to buy it, or if you are paid at the minimum, it's going to be 3.72 hours. In Canada, it's going to be 2.21 hours to buy that, or 2.84. In the United Kingdom, it's going to be between 1.43 hours and 2.83 hours. For a book that is $35 or about in the price range of the biography of Martin Luther King, it's going to be in the US 2.12 hours to 4.82 hours of work. In Canada, 2.80 hours of work to 3.62 hours of work. And in the UK, 2.4 hours of work to 4.73 hours of work. For a book in the price range of The Earth Transformed, it's going to be 2.42 hours to 5.52 hours in the US. In Canada, 3.22 to 4.15 hours, and in the UK, 2.87 to 5.68 hours. And then finally, our most expensive book. If you work in the US, it's going to be 2.72 hours to 6.20 hours. If you're in Canada, it's going to be 3.52 to 4.62 hours. And in the UK, 3.35 to 6.63 hours. So, as you can see, if you are paid at the lowest of the minimum wage in the US, you may have to work more than half a day to buy a book. So even the cheapest book, if your day is 8 hours long, you have to work almost half the day just to buy a book. If you're paid at the highest end of it, then it's not as much, but it is still something. And then at the end of our scale, if you are paid at the lowest of the minimum wage, either in the UK or in the US, and you want to buy a very expensive book, you will have to work 3/4 of your day to buy that. In Canada, the range is much smaller, and I don't think it's not about the price of the book. I should have mentioned that from now on, I will use the price in local currency. So I am dividing, for example, the minimum wage in Canadian dollars to calculate the Canadian price of the book. I'm not using the US dollar conversion anymore. So it's just the local currency that is being used for each line of the table. So in Canada, if you are at the lowest end of the minimum wage scale, you will have more power to buy stuff than if you are at the higher end, than if you are at the lower end in UK or the US. However, the higher end does not afford you much more freedom. The higher end of the Canadian minimum wage will require you to work longer than in any of the other higher wages in the US and the UK for the same thing. So the highest minimum wage is lower than the highest minimum wage in the US and the UK. So I guess that's reflective perhaps more of social policy than the price of books, but it nevertheless gives us an idea, because books are supposed to be the cheap way of getting information, the cheap way of getting an education, a cheap way of traveling the world. But if they are expensive, if you have to work half a day or 3/4 of a day to buy a book, it's not that cheap. Now, the next unit I decided to use, I wanted to use something related to food. So for example, the average price of a meal or something like that. However, my problem was that there was no standard for that, either in Canada and the US or the UK. I could not find something that was specific enough and consistent enough between the three countries to be used. However, I thought of The Economist's Big Mac Index. So that's a magazine, The Economist. They decided to find this interesting and easy to understand way of comparing the value of currency. So basically they thought, well, a Big Mac is the same throughout the world. So if a Big Mac is, let's say, $3 US, then if you convert your currency for the price of the Big Mac, you should get something that is $3 US if your currency is valued at the correct level. So that's a way they tried to illustrate if your currency was valued, overvalued, undervalued, or valued equally or precisely. In my case, I did not really need the currency value. The nice thing about that is that The Economist calculates the price of a Big Mac for me. So basically, I just use their numbers for the price of a Big Mac, because the price of a Big Mac can change from city to city. It's not uniform everywhere. But the magazine The Economist has kindly averaged the price of a Big Mac for each of these countries. So in the US, the average price of a Big Mac, that's the data for 2022. 2022, for summer 2022. So it may be different this year, but in the summer of 2022, it was $5.36. In Canada, it was $6.11, and in the UK, it was £3.79. So how many Big Macs can you buy for the price of Happy Place? In the US, you can buy 5.04 Big Macs. In Canada, you can buy 6.06 Big Macs, so over 6 Big Macs. In the UK, where the price of Happy Place is quite low, you can buy almost 4 Big Macs. For the price of King, a life, you can buy 6.5 Big Macs in the US. In Canada, it's 7.69 Big Macs, so almost 8 Big Macs. And in the UK, it is 6.6 Big Macs. For our third priciest book, The Earth Transformed, it is 7.46 Big Macs you can get for the price of a single book. In Canada, 8.84, so we are closing on 9 Big Macs. In the UK, it is 7.92 Big Macs that you can get for that. And finally, for our biggest book, in the US, you can have 8.4 Big Macs. In Canada, 9.8, so we are closing on 10 Big Macs. And in the UK, 9.23 Big Macs. So basically, for the price of the book The World, you can feed an entire family at McDonald's. I mean, 8 or 9 Big Macs or 10 Big Macs, that feeds a lot of people. And the price of the Happy Meal is not included in that, but I'm pretty sure that the price of a Happy Meal is pretty close to the price of a Big Mac. So chances are you can feed an entire family once or twice for the price of a big new release. For the smaller ones, it's just a single meal. But that gives you an idea of the type of choice that you must make. You can buy a meal for everyone at McDonald's, or you can buy a book. It's two different things, but it's a choice that you can make. Now, let's compare a cultural product, a book, to another cultural product, movies. I don't have prices for a movie ticket because then again it changes according to the hour, the type of movie, the type of room. It depends on everything. However, we all have access to this service that is called Netflix. Though the content is not necessarily the same, I know that in the Canadian Netflix, there's a lot less interesting things than in the US Netflix. I don't know what the UK Netflix is worth, but we all have access to this subscription-based service where we can have access to an unlimited amount of movies and television shows. So hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of entertainment. And how many months of Netflix can you have for the price of a book? Originally, I thought I would use just the basic plan of Netflix, just so that we have one single price everywhere rather than having a range. However, Netflix has canceled the basic plan for Canada. It doesn't exist anymore. So either you have to have the cheap option with ads, or you go for the standard plan, which is for some reason more expensive than the basic plan. I don't know what's the difference between the basic plan and the standard plan. So we end up with the range. So the range is between the basic, it's the standard plan with ads and the standard plan. And in the UK and in the US, you have a basic plan that is in the middle, but it's not available in Canada. So we're just going to use these ranges once again. So in the US, the price for your Netflix subscription will be between $6.99 and $15.49. In Canada, it's going to be between $5.99 and $16.49, and these are Canadian dollars again. In the UK, it's going to be between £14.99 and £10.99. So for Happy Places, how many months of Netflix can you get for the price of a single book? In the US, it's between 1.74 months and 3.86 months. In Canada, it's between 2.24 months and 6.18 months. In the UK, because the price of the book is much lower, you get only 1.36 months to 3 months of Netflix. For King, A Life, the biography of Martin Luther King, you can get in the US 2.26 months to 5 months of Netflix. In Canada, 2.85 to 7.85. So we are at 8 months of Netflix, almost 8 months of Netflix with ads for the price of a single book. And then in the UK, it's 2.27 to 5.01. So pretty much in line with the US price. For the Earth Transformed, in the US, it's going to be 2.58 months of Netflix to 5.72 months. In Canada, 3.27 to 7.73 months. And in the UK, 2.73 months to 6.01. So 6 months of Netflix. So for the price of the Earth Transformed in the UK, you can get 6 months of Netflix. With ads, of course. And then finally, for our biggest book, The World, in the US, you can get 2.91 months to 6.44 months of Netflix. In Canada, 3.64 to over 10 months of Netflix. And then in the UK, 3.18 to 7 months of Netflix. That's the number that somewhat talks to me the most. If you have a choice to make as a family person to where to put your money for entertainment, are you going to buy one book, one expensive new release, or are you going to buy anywhere between 2 to 10 months of Netflix, of a subscription service that you get unlimited service? I think in many cases the choice is obvious. People will have a Netflix subscription much more than they will buy new releases books. And finally, my final comparison, it's not to calculate the price of the new cover, the new book, the new release, the hardcover new release. It's to compare the change of price between the hardcover new release and the paperback version of the same book. So if you wait for a year and a half, the price of the book will be drastically reduced. So for book lovers in the US, the $27, that's the thing. I don't know what the paperback version of these books that I use, for example, will be, because they're not available. I think Happy Places is available in paperback, but the others are not available yet. So I used these authors' previous book as the point of comparison. Now, they have not necessarily been released last year or 2 years ago. It may have been 5 or 6 years ago, because in the case of nonfiction, it often takes a while to write a new book. But it gives us an idea of the difference in price between the hardcover and the paperback cover of the same book. The price of the two books that have the exact same content. It's just the format that changes just a little bit. It doesn't change enormously, it changes just a little bit. So for Book Lovers, which is the previous book of Emily Henry, in the US, the hardcover was $27, the paperback was $17, so that is a 37% difference. In Canada, the hardcover was $36, the paperback was $23, for a difference of 36%. In the UK, I did not find a price for the hardcover copy of Book Lovers. It could be simply because I did not find it, because it was harder to find the price of new release of the hardcover of the older books, because in many cases the bookstore simply said not available anymore and did not give me the price that it would have been. So I did not find it for Book Lovers. But is it possible that it never came out in paperback? It never came out in hardcover. It came out straight in paperback. Given that it's a romance, that it's a summer read, it's a light read, it would not be surprising if the book had come out only in paperback. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, I did not find data for that particular book. Then the previous book of Jonathan Haig was a biography of Muhammad Ali called Ali, A Life. There's a bit, you can see a little bit of the trend in the titles. So the hardcover for Ali was $30 in the US and the paperback was $18.99. Difference again of 37%. In Canada, the hardcover was $37, the paperback was $27.99, a difference of 24%. In the UK, the hardcover was £25, the paperback was $12.99, a difference of 48%. That's almost half price. The previous book of Peter Frankopan was The Silk Roads, which was for a historical nonfiction a huge hit. So in hardcover, the price in US dollars was $30. In paperback, it was $22 for a difference of $27. In Canada, it was 39 Canadian dollars. The paperback was 29 Canadian dollars, a difference of 26%. This in the UK, it was 35 pounds. The paperback was $16.99. So again, a difference of 51%. It's huge. It's a huge difference in the UK. The previous book of Simon Sebag Montefiore, who wrote The World, was The Romanov. So it was a big nonfiction book about the ruling family of Russia. So the hardcover was $35 in the United States. The paperback was $23 for a difference of 34%. In Canada, it was $47. The paperback was $30, a difference of 34% also. And in the UK, the hardcover was £25 and the paperback $12.99, a difference of 48%. So these are the last numbers that I have. As you can see, there is a dramatic difference between the hardcover version and the paperback version. And I think that is where the answer to my question is. Are hardcover new releases luxury items? And I think the answer is yes, because it shows that the books could be published for significantly less if they were published straight in paperback. And there's another thing that is not in any of my tables, and that originally I wanted to add. I wanted to include a fourth line in every of my tables. I wanted to include a line for Australia, because I really could see that Canada was not a good comparison point with the United States and the United Kingdom. It's too small a market, so the comparison does not really stand. So I wanted to compare with Australia. However, there are no hardcovers in Australia, except a few exceptions. Except some exceptions. A book may get a special release in hardcover. But it's not going to be the first release. It's going to be a reprint. It's going to be a luxury edition. It's not going to be the new release. And the new release is in paperback. So that tells me something that is, it gives me the answer, basically. So the Australian market is too small to support two releases of a single book. So the book will not do well if it is released first in hardcover and then a year later in paperback. So the publishing houses have to make a choice. Do we publish it in hardcover or in softcover? And they go for the one that makes them more money. And that is the paperback version. Because I'm sure that they are not choosing the paperback version just to help Australians, just to make sure that they can have access to books. Because if the price is more expensive, they will not have access to books. That's not it. It's the choice is between what makes the most money. Okay, if two releases of a single book does not work and we have to choose one, which one do we choose? We choose the one that makes money, and the one that makes money is the paperback. It's the soft cover. That's the reason why I think that the answer to my question, are hardcover new releases luxury items? The answer is yes. I think it's a question of branding. Another aspect to the question is, what type of book gets published in hardcover? Again, the missing data in my table was about the hardcover of Happy Place, which is a romance. How many romance get hardcover releases? Very, very few. Just the ones that the publisher has decided this will be the hit of the season. This is the one we will force down everybody's throat this year. I remember around Christmas time, the one that was everywhere was Have a Merry Little Meet Cute. And yeah, there was like 150 copies of that book in a single bookstore, and the copies aren't there anymore. So I don't know if they were sold or they were just sent back to the publishing house, but that's the book that they decided would get published in hardcover and would be sold everywhere. But for most romances, they come out straight in paperback. Think of the most recent rom-com that you've bought. Chances are that it's in paperback, or the Harlequin novels, it's straight to mass market paperback. Same thing for many of other genres, such as cozy mysteries. They're straight to mass market paperback. I don't know, like westerns, straight to mass market paperback. Some mysteries will get hardcover releases because I think it's a field that wins a lot, but it's also a field that has a lot of prizes, a lot of literary prizes, because there's the Agatha Christie Fiction Award, Agatha Christie Mystery Award, I think, and there's I don't know the name of the literary prizes, but there are a number of literary prizes for mysteries. So perhaps the publishing house thinks, well, if we release them in hardcover, it's going to give them prestige. In the case of general fiction, I'm pretty sure it's only the books that have a chance at either selling a whole lot of copies because the author is famous, such as Tom Hanks, or the books that have a chance at winning a literary prize, or at least be nominated for a literary prize, such as the Pulitzer, the Booker, the Women's Fiction Award, or something like that. So these are the books that get published in hardcovers. It's not the mass market books that are being published in hardcovers. So again, kind of a sign of prestige. It's kind of the branding of the book. Was it worth a hardcover release? Because if the book is worth a hardcover release, it shows that either the author is already very famous and has chances of selling a lot of books, or that the publishing house is standing behind that book and wants to promote it. So there is status related to hardcover books. So that's another clue that sort of tells me that hardcover books are luxury items. So I think that is all that I had to say on the topic. That's all that I had prepared at the very least. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm not going to talk about my personal book buying habits. Well, maybe just to say one thing. I made the comparison with the minimum wage salary, the minimum wage. How many hours do you have to work to buy a book if you are at minimum wage? I want to say that I am not at minimum wage. I earn a good living. This is not my situation. So I'm not complaining that I cannot buy books because my wage is too low. That's not the question. I could buy books. I could buy new cover releases at least once in a while. And if you've been watching my channel, you haven't seen them because I don't do it. So I'm going to keep my personal habits, book buying habits, for a different video. So this one is really just a whole bunch of numbers to try to figure out, to try to have an answer to the question, are hardcover new releases luxury items? So let me know in the comments what your conclusion is. So it's my conclusion that hardcover new releases are luxury items. You may have a completely different conclusion. Perhaps you work in the book publishing sector and you know the reasons for hardcover new releases and you think that they are a great thing. So let me know in the comments what you think about it. And if I forgot something or if I have some numbers really wrong, let me know. So that is it for me, and I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!